This podcast is rated PG-13. Parents strongly cautioned. Some material may be inappropriate for children under 13.
Mission 215.
All right, I'm recording again.
All right, I've been recording. Yeah, we're good.
We're going to Johnny's book corner. We're doing the book corner.
Johnny!
All right, so book corner. I got two books this time. There's two books that Miyazaki wrote. They're more of a collection of his essays, interviews. He's done some film criticism. So he has two books. One's called Starting Point, which covers 79 to 96. And then he's got another book called Turning Point, which covers 97 to 2008. Turning Point, the second book, has more about Princess Mononoke in it, so I had to get that one too. But these are, if you love Ghibli, you should get this.
So he thinks everything before, this is right when this movie came out. So this came out in 97, so this is the barrier. So he thinks this movie is when he started and everything else was, or like the starting point, and this was when he made it?
I don't know what he means by Turning Point.
Turning Point, yeah. That's when, so this movie was like one of the first ones to be popular in this country.
Right. I've kind of had to skim these books. These are thick. There's a lot of material in both of these books, so I've had to kind of jump around a bit, and I'll keep doing it before we do Spirited Away too, because I'll find out some more stuff. And there's like over 100 pages in Turning Point to Mononoke, and another 100 pages, over 100 pages to Spirited Away, where it's just different interviews and essays, and there's him teaching a sixth grade class in Starting Point, and he is constantly thinking and worrying and trying to like do better. It's kind of amazing. It just seems to be how he functions. So these are like pretty amazing books. So I'm just going to kind of go through my notes through reading Starting Point, and then we'll get to Mononoke when I get to the Turning Point piece. And again, I didn't even have time to read all of this stuff on Mononoke because this is just a lot of material here to cover in a week. I wish this was my day job though, sometimes, because it would be really fun. So the foreword in the first book, Starting Point, is by our huggy friend, John Lasseter.
Oh, geez.
Give a hug and a wink.
Now, again, he must have been he was so powerful and such a force and a source of creative direction at Pixar that,
Weinstein released these movies in this country, so what are we going to say?
I know. Well, Weinstein helped push Mononoke. That was a real pet project of his through Miramax that they were pushing along with Disney. They were working to get those films over here.
They wanted to edit them down, which they weren't allowed to do, but that was
oh god,
thing.
That would have been good. But whatever Lasseter was doing was probably not good, because I don't know what else would have forced him out of Pixar the way he was forced out. But having said that, he was definitely the creative force at Pixar. And amongst other movies, when we study up on Moana, people were they were going to Lasseter for inspiration and ideas, and he was always giving them gold. Basically, he's good at this, and he is a huge, huge fan of Miyazaki. I always want to say it wrong when it's not like right in front of me.
Miyazaki.
Miyazaki. Okay. All right. I'm going to pronounce names wrong. It doesn't mean I disrespect them. It just means I have problems.
So that's fair, John.
I just want to say, but Lasseter notes three kind of things, and he apparently would show Pixar animators and filmmakers. He would make them watch like Totoro and other Ghibli films, because he thought that Miyazaki was a master at making these films, and he has nothing but praise for the whole process. And I think that a lot of what Pixar has done has been just trying to take what Ghibli was done and Americanize it. And what Lasseter notes for Miyazaki is three things in his foreword that he writes to this book: that character, scale, and pacing, and that he sees that this is just done in no way sense, like in terms of the way character can be captured by him. He notes how in Totoro the two daughters are shown doing the same thing, and you learn about their characters because of how they do the same things differently. And then scale is another thing.
It's funny for this movie. That's the least applicable to this movie. But I was thinking Totoro is the complete opposite of this one.
Right. But that's great. That's what you also can love about Ghibli's work. And Miyazaki says this in the books, that at one point he never ever wants to make a sequel. He thinks that's the death of creativity. In contrast with Pixar, who's very happy to cash in on cars and monsters and so forth. Hey, we'll make a spy movie that'll be Cars 2, Cars meets James Bond, or Animal House meets Monsters. It's Monsters University,
or Toy Story. Every time is the exact same. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, but some other twist on the Toy Story thing, sort of, maybe. Don't you love these characters? Aren't these characters great? Anyway, whatever. But he's just the amount of like care he has about wanting to do something good and creative and meaningful is it just he's over and over and over saying that. So it's just really interesting to hear that. He talks. I mean, for him, the starting point for him is the idea of how animation allows for all kinds of possibilities. When you're like a teenager or mid-teenager, you feel like you're operating in all these constraints, and you feel like if you were to be free from these constraints, you would have so much potential and possibilities. And that's why he sees that he thinks there's a lot of passion for animation amongst children and teens, and himself as when he was young. That's kind of what he saw there. And so one thing that he talks about over and over again is when he was younger, when he was in his late teens or so, he was in the animation, doing drawings and stuff, but doing kind of dark stuff, nihilistic kind of stuff, being kind of an edgy teenager, being dark and gritty or whatever. And for
Are there
him,
images in this book of what he's talking about there?
No, he doesn't. He mentions the type of material that there is. There's a whole style of work. And just from what I could describe, I can imagine it's just like goth kind of, dark and everything sucks and it all turns out bad or whatever. But he says like and I think this is when he doesn't say this explicitly, but I think that the starting point that he might be referring to in this book is that, he's talking about how he first fell in love with animation when he saw this movie called Hakujaden, which is The Tale of the White Serpent. And it was an animated feature that was produced in 1958. He still remembers the emotion that he felt because he fell in love sort of with the female character. And he went and saw this film over and over as a result. It was like being in love for him, almost like it was like a surrogate girlfriend for him. And I think this led him to want to create something good, seeing this film and being moved by this film, and it was animation. And I think that sort of seems to be kind of the starting point that he refers to, that he sort of changed at that point because he was so moved and so like enamored with this film that he saw, and that sort of like really kicked it off for him to be like, okay, this is what I want to do now. He wanted to go and do something creative and good and somehow life affirming.
That comes through.
He doesn't like mechs, so again,
mechs?
he sort of like mechs, like giant robots, which is kind of popular in anime.
Isn't there a giant robot
manga?
in Castle in the Sky?
He does. Well, he says, so this is what he says. He says, I have certainly drawn lots of mecha or mechanical things myself, but the general theme of currently popular shows seem to be that the protagonist jumps into a giant machine he couldn't possibly have created, battles the enemy in it, and then boasts about winning. I frankly hate these kinds of shows, and I don't care what types of robots are featured. For me, a truly successful mecha show shows the protagonist should struggle to build his own machine. He should fix it. And in modern society, humans have become slave to machines, so much so that machines currently hold the keys to our collective fate. But that is the real world. In the world of anime, by contrast, humans control and operate the machines. So it's just interesting to see him sort of criticizing the giant robot approach.
It is weird.
Animation.
This is the way these shows should go. Boring and all about repairing robots.
Right. You got an oil leak in Big Monster. You got an oil leak in Big Tank number 1.
I mean, the guy fell in love with a fucking anime character, so I mean, this guy's not exactly normal.
Well, I just like how he's thinking. I mean, he really is. He's opinionated, and he works so hard and has done such an amazing amount of creative work that he has a right to be opinionated, which makes this sort of stuff fun to read.
I don't know. Does he though? Like when we think about Scorsese, this applies to him too. Just because we like Ghibli more than in Miyazaki specifically more than Scorsese, it's the same kind of shit where it's like, all right, he did make some of the most, influential and money-making and popular.
This is creatives being creatives.
Yeah. Maybe Scorsese is really trying to say something meaningful with his work, but I don't see that in his films. I don't see it even when Scorsese talks about his own films. I don't see anything about really striving to really say something.
I think that's Denny's point, though. It's like it's the principle of the idea of being so caught up in your own fucking bullshit.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot of similarities between anybody who's a movie director and has been famous for tens of years, and a lot of people consider them the most famous people in their genre. They're the same. Miyazaki is the most famous animator probably, and Scorsese is the most famous guy who makes movies about crimes ever.
Right.
About and they both are successful
movies
through decades. Like most of their lives, they've been famous. And I don't know. And this sounds similar to me, where it's like, Scorsese's talking about Marvel movies. And he's like, I don't like that. And he's like, he's watching 1990s Mex movies. And he's like, I don't like that. It should be like this. And you're like, just leave it alone, man.
I see your
how about
point.
There's movies that do other things, and you just like are a part of that fucking beast.
He's not saying that this isn't art. He's saying I don't like this, and this is why I don't like it, and this is what I would rather see. This is the way he's talking about it.
It's not how
he
came off to me.
Did it come off as like it shouldn't be this way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like he was saying it was bad to me.
It's just typical creative bullshit. You can't tell him no. I guess it's too important, and
Well, and again, I still see like I don't know. Scorsese is just as all he's done is made just a shit ton of mob movies, and I don't care about them.
Yeah, but that's because you're trivializing him. In his world, he's the fucking cock of the walk. You know what I mean?
I know. But I see Miyazaki is making all of these varied films. Each of them are quite different. And each of them, like where he's constantly like it feels like he's trying to say something.
There's a mob buff somewhere that says exactly what you just did about Scorsese.
Right. Each of the mob films are different and a nuanced version of the mob thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That might be fair. Anyway, so if you're interested in animation at all, and if you are an animator, these books also would be really interesting to read because he does go into detail. Like he's got a whole lecture about how he does running and what running means and how you do running for different things for different people. Not going to cover that here, but it is interesting. And it just, so there's some things that he talks about where he goes deeper into like just how he thinks about animation and what's hard and what's easy about it.
That's cool.
What's easy about it? What's easy about
nothing
it?
Nothing could be easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like
relatively speaking.
In his world, easy
versus
comparatively to what's difficult.
Yeah.
Right. I get it.
It seems like it's all pretty freaking tedious, and repetitive, and hard.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And he's interested. Again, he has lots of thoughts and interesting things to say about sort of like how do you find like quality? How do you like really enjoy the things around you, and that it's hard to do these days? And this is a common theme we see too. It's just when there's so much entertainment available to you that it's really easy to get anything you want, and it's all so frequent, and that can make it a little bit harder to figure out how do you do something. From him, he sort of sees it like it's hard for him as a creator to create something that stands out from all of that other stuff. But he also thinks even as a consumer, it's hard for him to simply just enjoy something because there's so much out there to just enjoy, and you don't have to work for it or wait for it. It just, you just go get it whenever you want. And
fast
he just
food.
says that can make things, it makes things a lot more challenging in these days. And this was this is back in the 70s.
Yeah, not even close to what it is now.
Right. It's accelerated now.
You open your mouth, you start breathing out of your mouth, and you just like click through your TV and just start watching one of the tens of thousands of shows that are free with any of your subscriptions.
Yeah. He would have never made it now. His mind would explode.
He's still going now. He's still he's actually producing a 3D animated movie, right? Or he's directing it too, I think.
He retires like every time.
Yeah.
He was saying
he retired after
Mononoke.
this one, but it got popular, so then he made Spirited Away, which he was going to retire after.
He gets bored, I'm sure.
What he said with Mononoke was, and I don't. We'll when we get to Spirited Away, we can figure out what happened. You probably may already know, but he was like saying, "Well, I want to go and see if I can do more just straight directing." Like he drew like half of the cells for this film, I think.
Oh wow!
Well, so there are 144,000 cells, and he either drew, edited, or touched up 80,000 of those cells himself.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah. So he was really, really involved with not only the direction and writing and concept design and everything, but also the animation, which is like a ton of work.
I mean, it's got to be hard for him to relinquish that control to other animators, though, right? Like, as a director, you're going to sit there and like, how do they match his style and then get it right? And I mean, it's got to be somewhat of like a...
Right.
There's a really good documentary on how the Ghibli studio works. It's like a highly produced documentary, and I was going to save it. I think I'm going to save it for... I didn't watch it for today, but I'm going to save it for Spirited Away because that's the highest one. That seems... That's probably be it. Seems right. Two-parter.
That seems right. Yeah.
What's it called? I've heard about
something
it.
Something about dreams. It's like dream something.
I may want to watch it too, although I'll have lots to read anyway.
Dreams and Madness? The Kingdom of Dreams and Madness.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
He has a fair amount to say on on teams and how to work. And he actually says some things that make a lot of sense. from, again, I work in software development, and there's a lot of talk about what do you do? How do you have a really talented team? And he really talks about the important thing is having good people with talent. And that you don't want it to be bureaucratic.
Really?
Right?
That's an important thing? Is that what it is? Right. That's a trade secret right there, everyone.
So the lazy assholes that don't take any accountability, we don't want them.
I mean, you'd be really surprised at the idea. It's like, no, they don't think about that. They think about, no, you're going to I'm going to be the director and you're going to do what I say. And that's how we get things done. Or we're going to have a system of rules, or we're going to have a
That's what you call a toxic work environment right there.
Yeah, that's the top-down approach. That sucks.
Pretty common, and it's really the way of doing things. Whether in any case where you have large bureaucracies or large systems in place, because that's how you control a large number of people.
I live in San Francisco. Like the startups are all like that, and like everybody who isn't a successful startup because they got lucky and had a good idea and had smart people below them, all get they write themselves in to make all the money. And they think they're fucking geniuses for doing it, and they're not. And then they're assholes. Whenever you work directly with those people, they think they're right. And whenever they come down to the lower levels and make a decision, you have to follow it, even though it's a terrible fucking idea. Like, they're horrible.
Oh, yeah.
They're like almost universally,
entertainment's like that. Entertainment's like that. 100%. Yeah. Starts the creative. ATL, as they call it. The ATL, above the line. Do you know how many times I hear creative intent? Got to do it. It's the fucking worst. You're like, yeah, but it doesn't work for the customer. Creative intent. Okay. All right. And then it fails, and they go, what happened? And then you go, creative debt.
So I will give you a controversial quote here, which again,
for Miyazaki.
Yeah, if you guys, it's not like about women or anything like that. Nothing Wellian that we got last time.
Deer.
No, but so he would say that from his perspective, he's just talking about films and what he thinks really what the role of a popular movie should be, like what he wants to try to do in particular. Is like, even if they're lightweight in nature, the more popular and common films still must be filled with the purity of emotion. There are a few barriers to entry into these films. They'll invite anyone in, but the barriers to exit must be high and purifying. Meaning that kind of like, it's easy for you to get involved and sucked up in the story, but when things start happening, I think, in terms of what does the story mean and what do you take away from it, that's not a low bar. You're into the story and it's popular. It's very easy.
If it's so easy, Miyazaki, why didn't you do it in this movie? Huh?
Because I just wanted creative talent.
I think
it's not easy,
he makes
right?
something interesting and thought-provoking. No, well, easy to go into, easy to start watching.
I don't know. He says it's easy,
he's talking about too.
I don't know.
Well, he's talking about too. A lot of popular entertainment. So here he's saying the more popular and common films. He's talking about like the very the blockbusters, the ones that are built so that everybody will like them.
He's talking about Rookie and
but people still there's
Amsterdam.
No formula for that. Like that still takes talent. There are blockbusters that fail because they fail to do that thing that's supposed to be so simple.
Yeah. Right. So, but he's saying that he's just, films must also not be produced out of idle nervousness or boredom or be used to recognize, emphasize, or amplify any true vulgarity. And in that context, I must say that I hate Disney's works.
Oh,
the barrier
of course
to both the entry,
hate
the barrier to both the entry and exit.
Wait, he's sold out to Disney. What the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah, he let them produce. He let them distribute.
That's the lawyers and the licensing guys. They're making the money.
The barrier to both the entry and exit of Disney films is too low and too wide. To me, they show nothing but contempt for the audience. Again, he talks a lot, writes a lot.
Contempt for the audience? Wow. Jesus.
This is a total creative asshole who thinks he's got it all figured out. I'm sorry. I'd be sitting there going in the room being like, this fucking guy.
I think Disney loves their audience more than anything. They love the cash that their large audience brings them. They love that more than anything.
Right. Maybe they like their audience, but they're like, you guys, we're gonna like, you're gonna love this. We know what you like. We're gonna give you what you like. And he goes on to talk about with popular culture, some worries that he has is just everything just sort of becomes a game. Like love becomes a psychological game. Struggling or fighting becomes a killing game. Competitions become money-based games. And he feels like Japanese anime is like drowning in games to where the life and death of characters is treated as a game. So he just sort of like, again, just kind of thinks about with a lot of commenting on the popular culture there, where it just feels like the struggles become like non-emotional and they just become like sort of, again, game-like and not they don't seem to have meaning, but they still sort of are like engaging and they entertain you. They just become devoid of meaning, as if they're just sort of like action. They're just like things are happening, even if it's romance or whatever.
When was this written?
So this was probably this particular one. When was this? This was from an interview. So these are various like interviews or essays that he does throughout this book mostly. And he's edited them and compiled them himself. And this is from a 1989 article that he wrote.
So he's like shitting on Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that.
Yeah. And well, it's hugely popular, that sort of stuff too.
That's true. We have a different perspective of what he's talking about because we're thinking modern.
And this is sort of interesting. It's like he wants to make good films. And this is from an interview that he gave where he's like, he wants to make films for children. And they were asking, what is your reason for that? And he says, I think it's vain to think that we can confront problems in the adult world through animated films. That's not to say that films aimed at children are easier. They can be more difficult because they deal with origins and fundamentals. But I think these are concepts that are especially suited to animation. I wanted to depict the reality of present-day children in Japan, including their desire, and make films that will inspire heartfelt enjoyment. I think in a way, he's like trying to make these films that can come back to him, like that hit him the way he was hit by that one film too when he was younger. And be like inspired to do something creative and good. You know, he thinks that's fundamental to what he wants to do. That he wants to create these films that might inspire other people to be creative.
That's cool. Also, probably this movie specifically that's not relevant. That one comment is not relevant to that, right? Because you're not going to show a young kid this movie. I wouldn't think. I mean, you tried, John, but you had to stop.
No, I mean, I'd have to wait till they were in like, 5th, 6th grade, something like that. I mean, they need to be a bit older, I think. And even then I would brace them for it. So
did Alex see some of the gore in this movie? He saw like a snip before you hit the stop button?
He saw the boars, and the boar was initially attacking the village. And I was like saying, does this bother you? Should I cover your eyes? He's like, no. And he wanted to see. He was really interested. Sam was my daughter was doing something else. I don't know what she would have thought about it. She's a bit more.
Alex likes the worm pig. Okay, little Alex, he likes the worm pig.
He's all right with that. And I was like, well, okay, that's not bothering him yet. But it gets bad later on. Anyway, once the arms came off, I was like, nah, this isn't for you, buddy.
Wait, so were you watching this in a delay? Like, how do you? If you see it, he's seeing it too, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm like, I got my hand ready. I got my hand kind of like quick draw, so I can.
Oh, did you block the arm gore?
As his arm is like quivering, I'm kind of
paused on it. No, we're not gonna watch this.
I just blocked his eyes at that point. As his arm quivered and he pulls back the bone, I think this
all right,
is
Alex, you gotta sit right next to Daddy here because I gotta need to put my hand over your face at any given time.
That's great. We have snuggle time on the couch, so it works. So that's easy.
That's a good strategy. I don't remember ever having that happen to me. I think my parents used to screen the movie. Your dad was like,
"You're gonna watch this, boy. You're gonna watch this."
Well, they would screen the movie that we wanted to see, and then they would tell us if we could watch it or not. Oh, and sometimes like PG movies, like you can't watch it, and it would just make us want to watch it more. Like, oh, there's something good in there. We gotta watch it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Miyazaki has a lot of parallels with Lucas. I think like he was very much a creative visionary who just kept risking everything.
Visionary.
I know, a visionary.
Yeah.
You one of them visionies?
You're flawless so far, John. Flawless so far. You fucked up there, though, so not a perfect score.
Oh really? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thanks. I don't know. So he, he kept like
usually a lot more stumbling over yourself, you know.
Thanks.
Thanks, Teddy.
It's a backhanded compliment.
It makes it a lot easier when I don't have constant interruptions, criticisms, bitching about creative
you usually
people.
do a half-assed job there, John.
I feel like it's been about 5 to 10 minutes since we've criticized you, so
well then go, Phil. Let's can you get it all out of your system so that
I'm going to pause it. Pause it a little 5 to 10.
All right.
Sure. Talk to you in a bit.
All right. Sounds good. Anyway, I mean, it just seems like he's just constantly like was pushing things. Like the first 3 films Ghibli made were not profitable initially. Like Totoro became immensely profitable with merchandising and so forth after. But on their releases, those films, the first 3 weren't profitable. They didn't like recoup their costs. But he would like turn right around and invest more.
This is pre-VHS
and
too.
To get more. Yeah,
it was a big reason that like these 90s movies made much more money.
Right. But Mononoke or Kiki's Delivery Service was the first one to do well. Like out of the gate. And then Mononoke broke all kinds of records with its release too.
Yeah, did you see the record that it had? A hilarious record. So the highest grossing Japanese movie at the time in 95 was E.T., which came out in 82. And so in 97, Princess Mononoke came out and overtook E.T. until 97, where Titanic overtook Princess Mononoke.
Oh, right, Titanic.
No,
so they were number one it was like the same movie for like almost 20 years. And then Mononoke came out and overtook it. And then less than a year later, Titanic overtook it. So that sucks.
That does suck.
That's got to be kind of rough. Yeah. Titanic.
Fucking James Cameron coming in there.
Yeah, I know.
Taking all your fame and glory.
Okay, yeah. Look what I can do. So
the boat, it's going this way.
Well, Leonardo
watch out, it's going that way now.
Well, you got something for the guys. You got something for the girls, and you got like the romance and then you got this insanely well produced, like in terms of the techniques.
And you got Celine Dion.
That's what I was gonna say. You got Celine.
Yeah, you got Celine in there.
Yeah.
Kiss from a Rose.
So,
that's Seal.
What?
It's Kiss from a Rose.
No. That's no.
It's Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey singing the Kiss from a Rose duo in the end of the.
What?
Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'd like to see
that. Was the end of Titanic, right? I haven't seen it in such a long time.
Tommy Lee Jones singing "Kiss from a Rose."
Yeah, that's the end, right?
I think that would be amazing. I would love it. And Clint Eastwood in backing vocals.
Kiss from a Rose.
With Nick Cage somewhere in the background too.
Yeah.
It's the most '90s movie of all time.
So they don't work with scripts so much. They do storyboards and transitions. So he talks quite a lot about why that doesn't work for him. He has more of an iterative process, and he sort of like fills in a lot of things as he goes along and doesn't really like the idea of writing it all out beforehand in text. And so there's quite a few articles within these books where he sort of talks about that as sort of how it's not a process that works for him. Oh, Denny, he loves Stalker.
Of course he does.
And yes,
movie's fucking awesome.
It's sort of interesting. He's like, I know that there. He just talks about how sometimes, he talks about when he goes to movies or the movies that he was seeing, he was being asked, and he says, it was interesting. He just said, I know I watch films all the way through. He says, I can praise Tarkovsky's Stalker to the Heavens, but I haven't actually seen the whole film. I probably only saw the last third. And then just happened to see it on television. But that was enough for me. I was overwhelmed and had no desire to see more.
What?
This sometimes happens out of laziness.
This guy's a fucking nut, dude.
I know that if I were to watch films all the way through, their emotional impact would be greater. And I know the film's creator wants us to watch his or her film all the way through. But with Stalker, I was thrilled to the bottom of my heart. To watch any more would have been too much.
That's so weird.
I can't relate to that at all.
I know.
That is an insane thing to say.
He's an interesting guy.
Yeah. He's creative.
I heard the freaking song Ziggy Stardust, and I was like, this song's so good, I don't need to hear the rest of the album.
I'm going to stop at bar number 33.
Who's this David Bowie guy? I think I understand him completely from this one song, and I'm going to go ahead and say I'm a super fan and never listen to him again. That doesn't make any freaking sense at all.
Yes, Denny, just take it like that, Denny.
I mean, I'm not trying to knock him. He's obviously like
You're knocking him all the time here. I don't know.
I am, because he's a nut, dude. He's a creative nut. He's in his own head all the time, obviously. Yeah. Because he's so productive with his art. Like, he has to be totally in his own head all the time.
And he's quick to self-abase himself too. I mean, he's quick to like make fun of himself, and even in his own work, and he doubts his own work all the time anyway. So while he is strongly opinionated, he's also sort of quick to laugh at himself. And I think that helps sort of like, mollify the strong opinions a little bit, because he's not necessarily out to say that he's done a good job. I think if you ask him sort of point blank about this stuff, he feels like he hasn't achieved what he thought his goals were. He's not like, oh, I did this and everybody else should do what I do. He's like, no, I think this is the way it should be. I'm trying really hard, but I still think I fucked that up. And he's, again, sometimes too, he really makes light. So like, he just says like, this is like another interview in 95. And again, a lot of these are from Japanese magazines and then they're translated. So who knows if we lose things in translation with this stuff too. But the question was, Miyazaki, your films create their own world and touch many people. What is at the core of your films? And Miyazaki says, well, this is 95. So he's saying, we don't take a high-handed attitude about delivering messages or about the role our films play. Rather, my attitude is that I make candy to sell wholesale to the candy store. Of course, candy must taste good, and I would run into my trouble if my candy didn't sell well. For this, it must be colorful. I have to create something that looks like it tastes better. And we shouldn't think that it's because it's candy, it's all right to mix in toxic colorings or problematic artificial preservatives.
Okay, this guy's weird.
Yeah.
It kind of also goes against what he said before about like pop stuff.
He contradicts himself a little bit too.
I'm telling you, he's a creative nut that fucking makes this shit up as he goes. Like they all do.
That's why he wasn't able to pinpoint a theme with this movie or whatever you want to call it, like a general idea that's cohesive. And it's just kind of, it's like I'm trying to create an emotion that I can't explain to myself. So I'm just going to throw beautiful images at a screen and get people to work for me. And then
in hindsight, I'm going to have this whole great fucking story about all this shit,
I don't think it's hindsight for him at all. I don't feel like that he tries to retcon that stuff in terms of trying to say, I think he's desperately struggling for meaning as he creates the thing. I don't think he then looks back and then says, this is what I did. He looks back and says, this is what I was trying to do. He always kind of seems to say that. He says, I was trying to say this. I was trying to make this happen. This was what I was trying to convey. He doesn't say like, oh, all along I've conveyed this. And you see here and here, I conveyed this. It's more like, to him, it seems to be a constant struggle of attempting to like fit what he's trying to do and make it work. And I think that at least to me, when it makes him come off as much less arrogant and annoying. I don't know, but and also just like, if I look at the work that he's done and the variety of the work that he's done, then it's like I'm gonna try to listen to what he says.
I think he's just all over the place.
He kind of is, yeah. And again, this is like spanning years too, whereas he grows and gives all these different
his
interviews.
art is so consistent in its style and the way it sounds and feels. Even in this like violent one, you could definitely tell it's him.
No, it's true. He's got his own little.
And this will be interesting
technique.
too, because all the Ghibli movies we watched so far have been from Miyazaki. There's only one on this list that isn't from Miyazaki. It's from
The Grave of the Fireflies, right?
Yeah, it's from Isao Takahata, and it's coming up somewhat soon. And it has
so
a
we'll
different
get
feel
to see.
It. You can tell that it's not him.
Yeah, right. Well, it's like a musician, right? They got their own little stamp, and you know exactly what it is.
It's kind of cool.
So anyway, here's where I make the note that he's really preaching kind of about what he thinks the film is. So he says, herein lies the meaning in creating this work. So this is him talking about Mononoke. As we face the coming chaotic era of the 21st century, I'm not attempting to solve the entire world's problems. There can never be a happy ending in the battle between humanity and ferocious gods. Yet even amongst hatred and carnage, life is still worth living. It's possible for wonderful encounters and beautiful things to exist. I'll depict animosity, but that is in order to show the fact that there's something more precious. Right, depict the bondage of a curse in order to show the joy of liberation. What I will show is the boy reaching an understanding of the girl and the process of the girl's heart opening up to the boy. And that's part of what he's trying to say with this.
That's all there, but it's not cohesive. You know?
And in the end, the girl may say to the boy, I love you, Ashitaka, but I can't forgive human beings. And the boy will smile and say, that's all right. And he said, that's the kind of film I want to make.
Huh?
he did it.
Yeah. He wrote for the composer, he wrote a bunch of poems for each character, which are really cool.
Oh, damn.
But I won't read all of them. They're in this book, but they're really cool. Like, so for each character, he wrote a poem. And the poems seem to be really good and probably even cooler in Japanese. Yeah, it's like, so like, here's like Wolf Goddess Moro. You mustn't peer into her eyes because she will tear you apart with despair, because she will eat your heart while it's still beating. The Wolf Goddess is a survivor from the old world. Her bristly silver hair and two tails are the faint signs of primeval gods. Moro is the counterpart of nature that exists and is a mirror of the world. Despair is the true essence of life. Merciless is the true character of life. Her gentleness is the gentleness of life itself. What is more, she has learned hatred from humans. Anyway.
She has two tails?
Each of these, I didn't notice, but
I didn't notice it. Maybe they didn't draw that. I don't know.
He says, with Princess Mononoke, I wanted to break away from this label that Ghibli just makes films that are gentle to greenery and nature. I think he bristled at that people were saying like they make environmentalist films. And he said the way humans and nature interact incorporates within it the issue of the true essence of existence of human beings, what we can call karma or fate. Knowing this problem, if we really put a lid on it and just show the delights of nature and say we should cherish nature more, or we shouldn't cut down trees, it seemed to me that it wouldn't be any different from the sort of advertising that claims our company is a business that is kind to nature. And so he just, again, is trying to get away from this idea of just saying, oh, we need to be nice to nature. He's trying to get at something more than that, or more of exploring the relationship between man and nature and what it means. And it's hard.
Interesting.
One of the things he says over and over again, too, is the depicting of the demon spirit, the worms coming out. That's like him describing his own aggression and anger. He says he feels like that. He has these really intense bursts of anger and rage that are really part of him. And it feels like this. This is how he's depicting it. And it's really interesting to think of that like that, is thinking of the demon curse as more anger and rage.
It's like your blood's boiling. It's what it seems like, right?
Right. and that it's something that you shouldn't be around or near because it will infect you too. He says again,
for sure.
And he says over and over again too, he's sort of surprised that other people aren't like him in this kind of emotional intensity.
Everybody is. You ever been yelled at by somebody? You instantly get on the defensive and your blood starts going up too. You're just like, fuck this guy. I'm going to get mad too.
He tried to describe this to the animators for Mononoke and they didn't get it really that well. He had like one animator draw it and it was kind of cute little worms and he had to help take over and make it ugly.
Look, hot dogs. Show, you got to do hot dogs.
What he really thought.
You put a hot dog on top of a washing machine that's going nuts. You see that kind of vibration, you want to put that
Wiggle
on top
the
of
hot dog.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So here he was asked about Jigo. I'm not sure how you say that, his name. So that's the character, the Billy Bob Thornton character. So the interviewers ask him, like, what kind of being is he? And Miyazaki says, I think he is the most common type of person in this world. He is an approachable person and will kindly answer you when you ask him something. He's able to fulfill his function well within an organization because he operates on what is advantageous or disadvantageous. He isn't troubled by any discord between the organization and people. He may feel discord, but it doesn't bother him. He obeys orders from the organization without considering whether they are good or evil. His stance is that he has no choice but to follow orders. He is skilled in the ways of the world, and because he fully realizes the questionable aspects of what is being asked of him, he tries to get Lady Eboshi to do these things. He knows full well the horror of what he does, but we can't paint him as an entirely evil person. He goes on to say that this is no different than anybody working for a company. Any company like Exxon or Amazon or what have you, these companies that actually do quite evil things, and you know what they're doing, and yet you're willing to be part of them. And you've got to make a living. You got to feed your kids. You've got to, you've got to do stuff. And that's what we do. Like, and we're all of us are willing to buy from China. We're willing to do all these things, for example, that are very bad people, or we're willing to buy products that are bad for the environment. Maybe we'll do something like not buy plastic straws. Hooray. But there's all kinds of things that we're willingly doing that are not good for the environment or not good for people or that are evil things. And we're all quite willing to go along with them. And I think that that's kind of another point here. And that's part of being human, that he's trying to say too, that that's part of who we are.
Oh, that makes me sad. That makes me feel like he failed so hard.
Are you sure you don't live in California?
He failed so hard on that point because like that's not there at all.
That's not how I got it. Yeah.
Right. He doesn't come across as like that. I think, and maybe. And
I didn't make the connection. It's also a different time. Like I didn't make the connection.
If they made the movie longer and they expanded his character, then it would fit within the rest of the movie. So I could see that his idea was there, but it's just his character is shaved down so much and you don't even know the character at all. Like his character, that isn't there. That's, I don't know. Right. That
Plus, it's just hard for me to connect. It's hard for me to connect organization.
I see it. I don't see that. I don't see the failure in that. I see it in the way the film was done and how it relates.
Did you see it when you watched the movie?
I liked him, and yet I saw he was doing bad things. I didn't like him as soon as I realized he was doing bad things. I was like, I don't like this guy anymore. Why did I like him in the beginning? Why did his character change so much? And he was a solo guy who was conning people in a marketplace in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it cuts to him with a fucking army of dudes working for the fucking print of the. He's all the way. Well, and also he's being pretty nice to Ashitaka in the beginning. Sort of, he's being pretty chummy with him
because he has gold. He wants his gold.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But he was by himself then, and then later he's with an army. He just totally changes
because he's working for the emperor. He always was working for the emperor, and this was all. He was always just like doing these things that were advantageous to him. From Miyazaki's point of view, this is everybody. This is common. This is what everybody does.
Common, non-creative types.
No. Not
unless you live on a sustainable little farm and you feed yourself carrots every day.
Yeah, right. Or a tree guy.
I don't get the impression when he talks to these that he's talking about people different than himself either. I don't feel like he's separating himself from any of this.
He drives to work every day.
Yeah.
He puts his pants on one leg at a time.
Well, no, you put gas in your car, or even if you run electric cars, there's environmental cost to that. So he mentions that he's like contemplating that he wants to make like a movie for pre-adolescent girls around 10 years old. He's thinking that that's his next project. I think that starts previewing Spirited Away, that he's trying to think about that film, and that's what he wants to make next.
Yeah, Spirited Away was directly afterwards.
Yeah. So, and he does talk about, like, again, he wants us as human beings, like when he talks about like the violence and the particularly the image of the demon and the worms and stuff, that he wants to figure out how you can confront that as human beings and control that impulse. There's this interview with Roger Ebert at the end of this book, the Mononoke part, and he's like talking about that part of the film and how he wanted to show that even though this is a children's movie, he didn't want to make that soften it. He wanted to sort of really show violence and aggression and anger, and that's something that we all must sort of confront. We must, realize that that's all part of us, as opposed to trying to pretend it's not there or just say it's bad if it is. Anyway, so that's all I got.
Yeah,
that last point was I agreed with.
Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a good one. Thanks, Miyazaki.
Sitting here reading his stuff, I just come away with I don't get this impression of, oh, this is this creative asshole. Just comes across as that he's working his ass off trying to figure this stuff out and make something that he feels is worthwhile, and that's impressive. And who knows, what you may say, that's what Scorsese's trying to do, and then maybe I should back off. Because
Scorsese says it like an asshole. I watched Scorsese say it himself, and I was like, "Fuck you, buddy."
Yeah,
but I'm sure if I watched Miyazaki say it, I'm like, I might just not understand him. He seems like a nice guy.
and reading this stuff, reading all the different things that he does, like where he's like talking to sixth graders and trying to explain to them how 30-year-old people, when people used to only live to 30, they probably perceive time very differently. And then he moves on to talk about how insects like bees that only live a year long probably perceive time very differently. He's got a lot of interesting ideas, and he's trying hard to communicate something all the time. It seems like he's trying hard to like do something meaningful and say something meaningful. And that seems very important to him. And it does come across like in overall reading of this stuff. So that's kind of what's nice too.
I think it's just hard I think at any time when someone creative is trying to make statements on the human condition, it's hard to not come off like a pompous asshole.
Right.
It doesn't really matter who you are or what you're doing. If you're making statements and you're trying to figure out the human world, who are you? Right? For me,
but who's anyone?
A guy like me that finds that to be such pompous bullshit,
right?
It's hard for me to ever hear that stuff and not think, oh, yeah, fuck off.
Unless you agree with what they're saying, probably.
Unless you agree with what you're saying, right? And then you're all for it.
I can also look at this guy's work and see how hard he works.
Right, and that's respectful. I get it. I totally get it.
So I can see not only that, he's like saying all these things. He's like, hey, okay, I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking and what it means to me. And he has a lot more. There's something different in this where he does have a lot more. He's much more opinionated and really trying very hard to say something that is rather judgmental. And maybe that's different than when we listen to Guillermo del Toro talk about Pan's Labyrinth in that amazing commentary on his film. But I mean, he's just talking about fascism and war, where it's basically hard not to agree there that, those are bad.
Yeah, right.
As opposed to man's relationship with nature and what you should do about it. And that sort of thing, which is a lot, maybe a lot more opinionated. I don't know. Anyway.
Right.
All right.
Anyway, that's good stuff, John.
What do you got?
I don't have too much. There's not too many special features with this. There is, if you like Ghibli, and I mean, if you do, just watch the special feature where it has the storyboards along with a movie. It's just really awesome to see like the original idea and how they improve upon that and make it into like a narrative. It's pretty. Right. I just like.
And Miyazaki himself was often the one that like would do the storyboards.
He did the entire thing.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as everything I read, he storyboarded the entire thing himself before he actually created a plot. He comes up with like a simple idea, starts coming up with concepts, drawings, and then tries to like start piecing together a narrative, and then starts sharing with people after he works on it for a few years. This movie was the last big budget animated movie that used hand-drawn plastic animation cells, which used to be how all animation was done. But then there's this new one called inked and painted animation, which is kind of the same thing, but it's digitized, as opposed to like putting plastic cells on top of each other in layers and taking pictures of each individual frame, which is how all movies it was somewhere in the 80s where it switched over. Little Mermaid had like one shot where it was the new type of animation, but the rest of it was this plastic cell thing. The Rescuers Down Under, in terms of Disney, was the first one that was fully inked and painted, which was digitized instead of taking actual photos. This one was almost 10 years after Disney went to the digitization version, which was the inked and painted version. there's actually a little bit in here. There's 10 minutes of this movie is called The Inked and Painted. 10% of it is actually computer animated, which is
really
hard to see. I don't know where it is because there's no commentary
I have no
pointing
idea.
it out. But 10% of it is computer animated, like the backgrounds, I assume, maybe. And who knows what computer animated means, because Inked and Painted is kind of computer animation.
Right.
Because you're putting it into
back
the
then,
computer.
the tech wasn't that great. So it's not like he sees a bunch of polygons.
This is a year
show
after
up.
Beauty and the Beast. I mean, those 3D shots in Beauty and the Beast are
yeah, that's
tales
true.
all this
That's
time.
right. They weren't horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I do think, and this distinguishes Ghibli from the Disney films and the Pixar films. I think these films hold up to so much rewatching that the Pixar films just don't. As
And
much
maybe
as
it's
I like
because of
those,
some of the obscurity of the plot. You know, maybe it's
possibly.
Kind of, yeah.
I don't know if that's possibly it, because sometimes I do think it's like, yeah, okay, with the Pixar film, you've got like an interesting idea, and then you've got some kind of twist on that idea, and that's basically the film.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so damn simple that it's like, the plot drags it down after one view.
Kinda.
Where this one, it's like, I don't know what's going on, but the visuals are
Right.
fucking fantastic.
Right.
that's
and so
true.
maybe some of the
Totally true.
so maybe some of the obscurity of it sort of helps the rewatching. I don't know, but yeah, I don't
I think
mind.
at least compared to like Finding Nemo, you know, that movie
Yeah.
looks great, right?
Yeah.
I'm not popping it on and
I
putting
liked
it on mute.
Finding Nemo.
It was fine.
But even like the
Mine,
ones that I
mine,
really love, like
mine,
Moana,
mine.
I don't watch them and am interested the way I can put on a Ghibli film and rewatch it and be engaged, and that's
Totally agree, dude. For my, 6 of my DVDs are Ghibli movies. Like they're insanely rewatchable, and I think everybody likes them. Even though it sounded like, I don't know, I love this movie. TC liked it a lot.
I liked it.
Yeah, but also had more complaints. I think we've had more complaints this episode than any of the other Ghibli movies. I think.
yeah.
From memory, like it seems like this.
It
is
just
the
didn't make
most-
any sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
But neither did Howl's Moving Castle.
doesn't
But there was
have
still,
to.
at least
It
like
doesn't
compared
have
to
to.
Howl's, that movie didn't make sense either in a lot of ways. But at least the main character, the girl who turns into an old woman, was like, you could kind of relate to her. Like there was like relatable character driven stuff in that movie, even though the plot itself was confusing as fuck and we couldn't tell.
I think you're right,
on.
and I don't. I'm trying. It's mysterious to me why I'm not bothered by that, because I'm big about characters and relating to them, and it doesn't
It's because
bother
the
me in this
fantasy
one.
stuff is so freaking good in this movie. Like
Maybe
the characters.
Yeah, it might be that.
and
Like
the
I just like,
settings.
oh,
once
like,
you've
look,
disconnected from having to
fucking
learn
wolf
about
god.
the
I don't care.
characters.
Look, there's the wolf god. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that just kind of helps you. Everything's so fantastic that it doesn't matter.
I mean, the
You know.
movie starts off with arms being severed.
Yeah.
At that point, you're like, all right, this is off the rips.
I mean, the cool thing about Totoro was just how it was this combination of very mundane and fantastic. That was what was really cool about that. Was it was really about two sisters and their rather boring life otherwise, right? That was what was really cool about Totoro, was just how that was combined with this and this sort of like glimpses into this fantastic world. But it really wasn't. It wasn't the center of the film. Even it was. So yeah, I don't know. It's just different.
Definitely a difference.
Yeah, I'm interested. It's interesting to me. I'm not as bothered as you two are by that. So yeah, and
I'm
maybe
not
you're
really
right.
bothered.
TC,
I'm not,
that it's
I'm not
just
really
the
bothered either. It's
fantasy.
just like it really stands
You're
out. in this one.
complaining. You're whining.
I'm not
about it.
complaining.
I
I'm
don't know.
just pointing it out. I think it's an. I think it's.
I don't like it.
I love it, dude. I'm gonna watch this movie. I don't even know how many more times before I die. I'm gonna watch this movie. Definitely gonna show my kids it. Like this movie's
Yeah.
great.
Well, how old will your kids be before you show them this?
I honestly haven't started looking into that stuff yet.
Right
like,
out the womb.
Yeah,
Like I don't know.
that's a long time from
They
now.
come out and
Yeah,
they're covered in blood. You're like, watch
Look at
this
this
movie.
little
It's only
kid.
2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
This is the oxygen tank with an iPad laying on the top of it. This is
Yeah.
Mononoke. It's a good one.
That's right. Look at the arms. That's right. They got 7.
Yeah, I'll I need to check Spirited Away. Maybe I'll definitely get the kids to sit down and watch it if it's not too scary. So yeah,
Mononoke means supernatural, shape-shifting beings that cause suffering, disease, or death. So Princess Mononoke, it's kind of it was like a translation error where it's supposed to be, I don't know. The whole thing doesn't make any sense because San, who's the
Here we are
princess,
again.
San is the princess. She's not a fucking demon. She's a human who was raised by wolves. And she's not causing death. She's trying to save life. So,
Sure. All checks out.
But that's the definition of what Mononoke means. It's not a name. It's a noun for a spirit. So when they tried to sell this to Miramax again, what's his name? Weinstein tried to cut it down. Like they cut down Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. I think we talked about that
during
that episode. And then he was pissed about that. Miyazaki was. So this time they tried to do the same thing because this one was even longer. This is one of the longest animated movies ever. I think it's the 4th longest, like 2 hours and 15 minutes. They went there and Weinstein was talking about how he wanted to cut it down. Miyazaki left the meeting pissed and just left. And then Weinstein's office, Miramax's office, tried to contact Ghibli. And before he talked to him again, he sent him a samurai sword with the words "no cut" in caps engraved on the sword.
Wow.
No cut.
No cut.
Nice.
On a sword.
No
that was pretty good.
Let's see if he understands this fucking statement.
And he won. And he fucking got it.
Yeah.
No cuts.
Yeah.
He got the rights to not cut it. Yeah.
Why would you, again, character or no, what would you want to cut from this? I mean, it's all beautiful.
Know. I could actually see for this movie. Like, I don't think cutting it would deter the plot, you know?
I guess.
Because, the plot is just kind of, they probably watch like, this is beautiful. We could sell this, but it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. Let's cut it down to an hour and 30.
Right.
Hey,
People will still pay for
Find
it.
the least, like, make, sensible moments and just get rid of them.
Yeah.
I usually hate the like destructive against artists, like corporate type of thinking. But honestly, for this movie, I'm like, that probably would have worked and it might not have been that much worse.
Yeah, but it didn't, for being 2 hours, it did well. It didn't have any problems. But
it wasn't because so it did really well in Japan. It did really well on VHS. It did well in some other countries, but it did not do well in the box office in the United States.
And likely possibly because of its length. I don't know. But actually,
they went, so they did still break a deal, the Miramax deal, as they were supposed to show it a certain
going to be as wide.
Well, it wasn't as wide and it wasn't as frequently and it wasn't in the theaters as long and they didn't promote it as much because I think they were slighted by the no cut deal or something. By the sword. It's kind of like that wasn't written, but it was for some reason they didn't show it as much, probably because it was like, we can't make as much money. It's playing for 2.5 hours.
Right. And also, like, if you have that animated film that you're running, you're going to show it like in 4 different screens every half hour or something if you've got a certain runtime, and you just can't do that bulk showing if you got over 2 hours, maybe.
I think that's the first time I ever agree with the studios on that one. I might have, if I was looking to make money,
I would cut this. No,
I'd cut the shit out of this.
You work too hard on this. This is too beautiful. Like all that hand drawn stuff. No way. It's great.
No. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
That's all I got. That's it.
All right.
Sweet.
So what are we doing next?
So next week, actually, John, I want to do the opposite of what we did for Star Wars. And I have a good reason to do it.
What is your reason?
Because they're remastering Aliens in 4K and it's not out yet.
Okay.
So I want to watch Aliens in 4K. So I kind of want to take Aliens and push it towards Alien, which is higher up on the list.
That's fine. That's fine.
That's not a bad idea.
That means we got to watch something else then.
Right.
So we're gonna wait on Aliens.
Okay. We agreed on that.
That sounds good. Yeah.
The only thing I thought of, and TC, did you think of anything since last week?
Huh? No.
I think you were tasked to say,
no,
could you think of a movie?
Think about this. I remember on Tuesday every week. Oh, fuck the movie. That's about what I remember.
I got us to watch the last 3, so I got to sit on the sidelines for a while. So it's up to you. And
so, hey, how about we do this thing? We think about it and we insert what we're gonna watch right here.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna do this.
It's funny right now.
Guess what we did?
What did we do, Danny?
We figured out what movie we were going to watch next week.
Yeah, what are we going to watch?
That?
And John, you tell us. You're the one who picked it.
Like Stars on Earth.
That's right.
Oh.
That's right.
Directed by Amir Khan Amole Gupte. And I don't know if I'm even coming close to pronouncing that right, but
yeah.
The synopsis is an 8-year-old boy is thought to be a lazy troublemaker until the new art teacher has the patience and compassion to discover the real problem behind his struggles in school. And this is currently, as of this recording, number 92 on the top 250.
So it's legit.
Wow, it's pretty high up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Amir Khan.
I mean, Amir Khan's the man.
Yeah. For some reason, this movie is skyrocketing on the list right now. This is a 2007 movie, and it wasn't even on the list like a year ago. So I don't know what the hell is going on.
I feel like this movie touches on some things that people are really focusing on recently. So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, before last year, no one gave 2 shits about dyslexic people. That's true.
Yeah, you can't read? Go fuck yourself. No one cares, right? Yeah.
That's right. Bunch of
now
lazy.
It's like, everyone's like, you have problems? So do I. Everything's okay. It's okay. And hey, it could be a good movie. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we will.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you guys.
All right. Take care, guys. All right. Oh, top 250.
Oh shit! Yeah, top 250. Yes.
Are we still doing that?
Yeah,
Yes.
why not? Sure. Yes.
Still doing it every episode?
Yeah.
Really? This
Is that
time
what
again?
we do? Who am I? Where am I?
Well,
Who are you
Danny,
guys?
let us off the hook. We just feel it's a
That's
free
true.
for all
Maybe
now.
we forget the thing that we're doing the podcast for. Maybe
What
we
was
do
the
that.
idea again? I don't remember.
Okay.
All right.
Good luck editing this one.
Oh, yeah. It'll be a two-parter, that's for sure.